All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My History with your host, Game Tourney Forever, as usual. And gosh, here we are. We got the Switch 2 just came out, and here I am talking about another Nintendo portable system. Whether how portable this thing is, that's up to you, I guess. But I don't know how well this video will even do anyway. I mean, again, I'm a small YouTuber, but here talking about the Virtual Boy on Switch 2 release. Anyway, so as usual, I'll get into my history with this system, my thoughts on it, some of the things I have, and of course a job update. So, and I'll just start with that. I actually have great news. I did receive an offer and I took it, and so I do start a job in probably about a week and a half or so, and so that's exciting. It's not the job I really wanted, but it's something to get by. It's a little less than what I was making base-wise before, but I used to get like bonuses and things like that. That is completely gone, so definitely going to have to live a little frugally for a while until I can find something a little better. But still, hey, blessed to have found something and have something to be able to, keep the lights on and just survive for the time being. So, but anyway, so here we are, the Virtual Boy, and I tried to align the camera a little bit so you can see in here just a tad. I got some tunes playing on it. This system actually has got a really good speakers on it. And some of the music on the games are really good, and this is one of my favorites, and I'll get into that as I kind of go through the system more and more. But let's get on to my history with this system. So this system just kind of came out at a very unique time in that, the Saturn was out. PlayStation wasn't out yet, but it almost was. It was on its way. And we knew of the Ultra 64, but it was still a ways away. The Super Nintendo, we were still rocking the Super Nintendo. And Nintendo put this out. This was another one of those sort of third pillar things they like to do every now and again, like they did with the DS. They claim that was a third pillar along with Game Boy and I want to say Wii or GameCube at the time. This was not supposed to be a replacement for the Game Boy, but just be something totally different. And it really is that. It's just so different from everything else that Nintendo has out there or has put out. The closest things you're going to get to this are the 3DS and then Nintendo's Labo headset, which my son, he's got a new 3DS XL, and we actually have that Labo, and it's crazy when you play those knowing that it all started here, decades earlier. Gosh, for the 3DS, a decade and a half, and for the Labo, probably 2.5 decades. This system came out in 1995, so it was, I would say, way ahead of its time when you think about anything else being out there like that, like this at the time. It is just red LED, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Looking back into this thing, I was actually more impressed with some of what I saw than what I remember. But let's get back into what I remember. So yeah, 95. I had heard about this system. I knew about it. I remember seeing the commercial with the kind of the walking robot and trying to hook onto you and hook up, and I remember thinking, wow, that's going to be interesting. But, I only had one friend actually get one. It was my brother's friend, Jeff Rohn. He'll probably never see this, but if you ever do, Jeff, hey man, hope life's been good for the last, 25 years or whatever. We moved, me and my family, and from our old neighborhood to a new neighborhood, and I never saw that guy again. So I always hoped he was doing well, though. He lived with his dad. But anyhow, he had one, and I remember him telling us he was super excited he got it, having us over to play it and try it out. And I remember it was in his dad's room. And I remember when we got over there, the first game we tried was Mario Tennis. Now, this was a pretty neat game. I think it's actually the first Mario Tennis game, too. I think this is what started the series, but I remember we put this on, and when you saw kind of the 3D, like the ball coming at you, it was quite impressive. It was pretty neat. And, you know, it was a cool little novelty. It was fun for a little bit, but I'll be honest, the game's kind of difficult. It's hard. You really got to play it to learn, like, the depth and where to hit, and the CPU is relentless. But still, a neat little kind of first game. I think this came with most Virtual Boys. But yeah, had to pick this one up just because it was kind of that first game. They actually have hacked versions of this now where you can connect to Virtual Boys, and they made a link cable that never came out officially for the Virtual Boy, but they ended up making one aftermarket later. And you can actually now play against each other, two-player Mario Tennis, which is really cool. So we played that at his house, and then we weren't on there for long. The other game he had, I think he had one other game. He had Virtual Boy Wario Land. Now, when we played this was fun. This looked really cool. It had fun gameplay, and this is honestly probably the best game for the system. This is just a really good game. I'm shocked Nintendo has never ported or brought this over in some capacity to the 3DS or anywhere. I mean, this is such a fun game. And honestly, when you put this in, even now, there are treasure rooms you can find. When you walk into the treasure rooms, the 3D effect inside those is really, really impressive. It looks really cool. But if I was to recommend one game for this system, this is the one. And again, we played this at his house, taking turns. And mind you, this is a system you want to take turns with. You know, there is some warnings about age limits for children's eyes. I think the 3DS, it was like age 6 or 7, and this is age 7 or 8. And I made my son wait. I had him on a 2DS and then a 2DS XL. And then when he hit 6 or 7, I think it was 7, I finally got him a 3DS. And he always wanted to play this. And again, I think I made him wait till he was 8. And then I finally let him play the Virtual Boy. But you feel it. If you have your head and your eyes in this thing for a significant period of time, you come out and your eyes, I mean, you will notice they feel like, I don't know what it is, wore out, or there's just something about having them so close to these lenses. Now, I'm not going to say it's damaged my eyes or anyone's eyes that I know of, but you definitely feel it. This is a good system to have to just take turns and play. You don't want to be on this thing for long periods of time. Now, with that being said, again, you can't see what the other person's experiencing. So I know there's a way to mod these to where you can get like I think it was like a VGA out. So people can actually see what you're doing, or you can just play on the TV. And then I've also seen consoleized versions of the Virtual Boy where it's, you know, there's no lenses. It's just a consoleized version that you can play on your TV, which is pretty neat. But anyway, getting away from that, that was all the games our buddy Jeff had. And honestly, after playing the Virtual Boy for a couple times, we never went back to it. We just went back to playing his NES and other stuff. This really was just a novelty system. It just didn't blow us away at the time. And then after that, you know, I never saw it again until the rise of YouTube and the Angry Video Game Nerd, and just some of these folks on YouTube that have talked about it. Norm, the gaming historian, and there was one individual, I think his channel's called NES Complex. I remember his video was the first video I saw of someone that reviewed like every game on it. And so that kind of got me interested in getting one again. And so I ended up picking one up from Game Over Video Games, which is where I picked up a lot of my stuff. And it came with the battery pack and the system. Now, batteries on this thing are on the Lynx Nomad Game Gear level. And I'll even mention Turbo Express. It took 6 AA batteries. So yeah, we sit here and we say, okay, portable. Not really. This thing was and I don't even know how long it would last. I haven't actually put them in here to try it out. Um, One of the first things I picked up when I picked up my system was I bought the AC adapter pack. Now, the adapter just plugs in the back, and then an adapter plugs in. Now, the cool thing about this is the adapter that the Virtual Boy uses, it's just a Super Nintendo AC adapter. That's all it is. So you don't even have to buy one. If you have a Super NES, you can use it. I wanted to buy one just so I had two separate adapters. It's also nice to have a backup in case your SNES adapter goes bad or anything. But speaking about this thing too, I want to talk about this controller. This controller doesn't get a lot of attention in the history of Nintendo controllers because of the system it's for, right? But I gotta tell you, I love this controller. It's like it was built for people that are left-handed and right-handed. You got two D-pads, you got buttons on the same placement. You got these cool little triggers back here. This is a very comfortable controller to hold. The on-off button is here. That's the only thing. You got to be very careful with the pack and the on-off because you could easily cut the system off one way or another. But outside of those two things, this is a very comfortable controller. It plays well with Mario Tennis and Virtual Boy Wario Land. Another game this thing is really well used with is another game I picked up later called Telero Boxer. Now this game right here is really one of the best showcases of the Virtual Boy. It feels like you're almost playing Super Punch-Out or Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. More on the Super Punch-Out or the traditional Punch-Out. But it's very 3D, and you see those fists coming at you, all like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Really fun, good music, very hard. I suck at this game, I'll just be honest. Really cool death animation, though. When you die, it the screen flips out almost like you're a Terminator, like you're a robot, and it like snows out and like you're shutting down. It's really neat. So if you want a really cool game to see what the Virtual Boy could really do, this is a cool one to get. Another one that I have here, this is a little bit of a harder one, I think, to find. Mario Clash. This was kind of the Mario game for the system outside of tennis. Now this is like the traditional not Super Mario, but the Mario Brothers arcade game. It's like taking that, but putting it where there's like a background and a foreground, and I believe you can even go up top, if I'm not mistaken. There are tubes that go up top, and you can throw shells across the screen to hit enemies, throw them in, where they go to the other side. This is a really cool game and a fun game to take turns with a friend. It has a ton of levels, though. It's really unfortunate this doesn't have a save feature. I think this game would be so much better if it had a save function, because there's just way too many levels to beat on one run. If any of you out here have actually sat down and beat this on one run, please let me know, because this thing is huge, but a really cool game. Another one of the good ones for the Virtual Boy, and I say good ones because there are some games in the system that I'm just not interested in at all, and I'll get into what those are. Another game I have here, and it's the one that's on the box. Again, one of my favorite, my only box Virtual Boy games, Vertical Force. This is your traditional shoot 'em up. Vertically scrolling, shooting, dodging. Now this is really cool because you can go high up or down low. It's got a depth perspective. Different ships up top or down low. And it's really fun. This is going to be another one of those traditional playing games where they use different aspects of the Virtual Boy, but it's very traditional. And like I said, to me, the traditional stuff is really what's most fun on this system. In fact, I'll just get into some of the other games that I don't have no intention on getting. Red Alarm. I am just not a fan of those the line graphics, trying to be like Star Fox almost. It could be a good game. I just have no interest in the way it looks. Same with like 3D Tetris. No interest in that. Golf and baseball. It's just too red, and I'm not huge into sports games. Panic Bomber, I don't know. Not a big puzzler guy, but one I will talk high praise on is the one that the music's playing right now that I actually have in the system. Virtual Pinball. I love this game. Not only is it fun, not only does the graphics, like the 3D with the Virtual Boy, not only does it work really well with this game, the music on this game is so good, which is why I'm playing it right now. This wasn't the first game I got. I think it was actually one of the first two, though. But this music is just so good. This is actually an OST I could pop on. I highly recommend, if you guys ever want to just hear some good Virtual Boy music, throw on the Virtual Pinball soundtrack. There's actually some Metroid music in there, and I believe a Samus cameo. I think there's a Samus level within the game, which is kind of neat. It kind of inspired that Metroid Pinball that came out on DS later. I think the very first Metroid Pinball was right here on one of the levels. So highly recommend that game. Probably the number one game I go back to, honestly, when I want to play this thing. Now, my rarest game for this system is probably Nestor's Funky Bowling. Now, Nestor is a character from Nintendo Power. You'd flip through the magazines, and he was in there in his little comic strip and talking about different things. I always found him amusing and entertaining, and when I found out there was a game that had him in it, I was like, no way, I have to get that. And again, this game is a little pricey. It's, not as much as some of the big hitters out there, but it's probably pricier than everything else I have out here. And despite it being bowling, it's actually a fun bowling game. You can play as Nestor, or I think his sister. And I actually really like their animations, like, when you get a strike, or when it's a fairly entertaining game of bowling. And again, one of those good ones you can just pass around and play together with friends. But that about concludes my full Virtual Boy collection. I did mention there's some other games I would love to get out there. For the US collection, there's not very many more. There's like 2. I'd love to get Waterworld. I know people trash it all the time. I don't think it looks as bad as what people say. And I'm a sucker for rare games. So I'd love to pick up Waterworld, give that a try, see how that is. And then, of course, Jack Brothers. I would love to get Jack Brothers. It is so expensive, though. I don't know if that'll ever happen. I know it was like the first Megami Tensei game to ever show up in the States, so I think that has some appeal, and it's one of the best games on the system. Again, it's one of these top-down kind of action games, and it looks really neat with being able to choose one of 3 characters. I really hope someday to be able to grab that one. And then I want to say there's 2 that came out in Japan I'm interested in. There's a Space Invaders for the Virtual Boy that looks awesome. I so want to get that someday. And then there's this first-person horror game that looks really neat. I wish I could remember the name of that. That one I'd love to get someday too. And then surprisingly, there's actually a lot of homebrew for this system. If you just go online and look at aftermarket Virtual Boy games, there's a good deal of them. And then there's other Japanese releases that are unique and interesting. One of the big ones I want to get for this system is Hyper Fighting. They actually made a version of, I think it's Street Fighter 2 Turbo for this system that runs well. And they actually made it to where you can connect 2 Virtual Boys and fight each other. That is a goal of mine, to get that game in a link cable, because I have another buddy, my buddy Tim, who's got a Virtual Boy, and I'm sure if he had the game and I had the link cable in the game, he would totally be down to play. But that about covers it. I don't heavily look for these games, but if I see them and they're there, especially if it's one I don't have, I'm always up for getting it. But I guess to close, I'll kind of give you a little view of the system here. You've been looking inside, but the front of it looks like this. And one thing I'll say is these little cases, they're not cases, but stands. They're notorious for cracking from just the weight. So you want to be careful with these. Mine is in good shape. I actually have everything. The little foam piece, some people complain about these. I've kept mine in really good shape. The only issue I had with my Virtual Boy is when I bought it, the eye was kind of going out. And so I took it back, and there was a gentleman there. His name was Mark Baker. I loved his email. It was Maker Baker. But I took it back, and he kind of fixed it. He reseated it, and then it messed up again. So I reached out again, and this time he went in and soldered all the ribbon cables in. So my Virtual Boy has been working strong now for like the last 10 years since he did that. I've had no issue with it. Now again, I'm not pulling this thing off the shelf all the time and playing it, but I mean, you can hear it. Speakers going, I know you can't see, but both lenses work perfectly. Little more description of the system. There's different dials to really kind of dial this system in. Volume knob, headphone jack. Really just kind of ahead of its time. And I believe this was the last thing Gunpei Yokoi touched with Nintendo. He was kind of the big guy who created the Game Boy and a lot of the old toys. And I think he may have even been in charge of the Game & Watch. All the stories I've heard about this man are just incredible. And the photos of him with devices, I wish he would have never gotten his car wreck. I feel like he would have been such an interesting guy to interview and talk to. And honestly, everybody talks about Satoru Iwata, Shigeru Miyamoto, and of course, Hiroshi Yamauchi. I would put, personally, Gunpei Yokoi up there with those guys. I really feel like, especially what he did with the WonderSwan, such a beautiful little system. I don't have one, but I've seen them. I believe that was his last work. But I really wish that man would have never passed and we could have got more from him and just got to hear from the man about his experiences with all this in time. But anyway... So, I urge you, if you're ever curious, hey, give these systems a try. Just make sure, they do come with some maintenance issues. But I really think they're a lot better than what some people say about them. And so with that, guys, that is my opinion, my history, and what I think of the Virtual Boy. We will catch you guys later. Enjoy your Switch 2s out there for all that have them. And we'll see you next time.